how we how we'll code it with Node.js. So I'll share my screen quickly. Yeah. So basically, Node.js restaurant is the title of today's thing. And yeah, let's cook and serve some data on the web and made with love using JavaScript. So this title is because backends and servers that we access using the web are just like restaurants of data. Basically, what that means is that these restaurants take requests and serve some data to the person who visits them or who is their client. So I'll start with like today's table of contents, and yeah, we'll start with like what restaurants of the internet are. So like yeah, backend development, as I said, is like building restaurants on the web. Then we'll see the menu. So basically, when we use Node.js for creating like web applications, we create something called an API, and this API is basically the menu of your restaurant. Then we'll look into the kitchen, what happens in the kitchen, how is data cooked, how is data fetched, how is it served, and specifically using Node.js. Then we'll see the pantry. Uh, so yeah, pantry is, I think, I hope the word is correct, but yeah, it is a place where you have your like raw materials for your what raw materials for your dishes and whatever food that you cook, right? So we'll see like we'll see where the data is stored, how is it stored. Then we'll see a complete service MERN, not exactly MERN. We'll see MEN part of this because we already saw React. So the complete stack, yeah. And then we'll see some code examples for this. So yeah, great. Yeah. So basically, what parts do the is this box visible here, like the chat box? Okay, great. So yeah, basically, there are three parts of an online restaurant that you create. Basically, a server-side web application which serves some data. One part is the client, that is your browser, and that is you. Basically, if you visit a restaurant, then you are the client. API is a way like in which the client communicates with the server. So API is a way in which your browser, like the web application that is loaded in your browser, would communicate with a server that is connected to your database and has some code that is useful for processing that data. So basically, it's like you have a menu and you order from that menu, and API is the waiter for that restaurant. A server is basically, if I were to continue with this analogy, server is the cook that cooks some data, processes some data, and sends it to the client for consumption. So I have an interesting example here. So yeah, if you were to like take someone on a date, and there's two of you, right? So this is me and this is someone. So I'm just like I'm just a browser or something like that. This is the front end, or you can say I am the front end, and everything like the way I look, so my makeup and how I like what clothes I wear are done using something like React. Okay, so well, my look is based on the front end that we discussed in the last session, which is React, and how like this person, like how I can talk and how I behave on this date depends on the UI and UX that you created on React. So if your front end is better, obviously this person that you have brought on, okay, it reset. But yeah. So this person that you brought on the date would be happy. And then obviously, not just like the UI, you also should take someone to a nice restaurant. So you need like a great API in the backend. This is a bit buggy, but yeah. So as I was saying, you need a great API in the backend. What this means is that you need to take them to a restaurant which has a great menu. Then you also need like you also need a good cook who can cook these dishes properly and serve them in like an easy and fast manner. So well, this is the part of your restaurant. Like I come here, I see the menu, I order something. Uh, my waiter is here who takes a request, gives it to the cook. The cook gives it back, and then I am served food. So I hope like this example is making some sense. Yeah. So basically this. So uh, the customers visit the restaurants, they request something, and this request in terms of web is basically an HTTP request. I'll show you what an HTTP request is. Then we have a menu, which is like what kind of dishes they serve, like what kind of data is my API serving. And then I request the API, and then the API translates the request for the cook or the server, like with the computer that is in cloud that is handling your database. Once this receives a request, it sends some response. This response basically contains JSON data, which is the most common. And then this JSON data is served via the API to the customer. And this is our front end. So did you catch that? Let me know in chat if you caught that. Like, is the analogy clear? Does it make sense what we are building today here? Okay. Yeah. Great. There are multiple ways to build basically your restaurant or your web API, and one of the way is Node.js. You can use Node.js to do other stuff also. Like you can build applications in Node.js. There's something called Electron.js that you can use. But for the purpose of like website making challenge, I would be talking about web servers that you can spin up using like the complete MERN stack uh, by using Express. So as I have some images here, what is Node.js? Event-driven IO server-side JavaScript environment based on V8. So what this means is that I hope you guys have studied Python because like I think like we had it in our college, right? So in case of Python, what you have is like they have this sort of interpreter here, and whatever code you write in a Python, like in a .py file, goes into this interpreter, and this interpreter like processes it and it gives some output. So well, Node.js is something similar. Node.js is also like similar to an interpreter, but not exactly. It is based on the V8 JavaScript engine, and the only difference I think that is in between like the Python interpreter and Node.js is that Node.js is event driven and event driven input output. And I think Node.js supports like async functionality and more threads and stuff like that. Python runs in a single thread and is synchronous. Yeah, that's what I remember. But yeah, Node.js is also like an application basically. And when we create web servers, like what happens is that we create some JavaScript code. Like these are my JavaScript files, and these are connected to each other using like I would have imported something here and I would have imported something here, and this is my main file, and I can just do node main.js. And what this will do is this will basically run my complete application in like this terminal which has node running, similar to how you would run a Python script by calling python script.py. You can do it with node also. Like Python has pip, right? Python has something like pip to install external packages. Node has something called npm, and basically npm is node package manager. So You can download packages. There are like several thousand packages on npm that you can download to make your work easier. So npm is yeah, you can visit this website called npmjs.com, and there are like thousands of packages here, and all these are open source. So you can visit their code, mess with it, and well, just play with it. So I hope this is clear, like how Node works in general. Like it is like just an application in your like a computer that can basically run some JavaScript code. And yeah, so in case of like a web, what happens is that your application is run in Node, and it is made publicly to like you can let your application interact with like a client by hosting it on like a network port. So my like my Node application, if I were to create it, or Node API, it would be hosted on something like a local host 5000 or like 8000 or any such sort of port. What this means is that uh, my PC has this application hosted on like a URL. So you can interact with this application, the application that you coded in JS and are host like are running it using Node. You can interact with this by visiting a URL, and if I were to run it, and if I were to so yeah, I visited this URL which has like some sort of query parameters, like some URL here, some port here, and it is in my local system. So that's why we have localhost URL. This is returning me some data. We'll see. Yeah.
We call it body line of control. Gando player ja. Will AI no money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it is returning us some sort of data here. We'll see what this data is. I'll show you. I'll run you through this application. So how to start with the Node.js application. So I hope like the prerequisites to this are you have Node installed and you have npm installed. So you can install it using, I think like you just have to search install Node and npm, and there are like lots of tutorials. You can use the documentation also, and there's this Node.js .org as well. So once you have Node installed, you can open up a terminal and you can just see Node dash dash version. I have Node installed and I also have npm installed. Yeah, and to show you some like how Node works, I can just open Node and it opens up a Node interpreter just like Python, and I can just do and this prints hello world. So now you know how to print hello world in using Node.js. Yeah. So like let's start with like a new application. So I will just make directory new app, and as I have like the instructions here, what you have to do is like just write npm init y, and this will start the script to initialize a new Node application. So I can write npm init, and this will like ask me for some details regarding the application. I don't want to do this here. Yeah. So yeah, package name by default it gave the directory name. That's okay. Version, yeah. entry point, it's just like the first file that you have, basically the main file. Just skip this. It's okay if you don't write it. You can write your name in the author name. Yeah. Now if I open like a VS Code here, uh, it would have added like the boilerplate code that is necessary for starting a Node application or like npm application. So currently I just have like a package.json here, and it contains like the details of my files. I can start adding my files. So well, uh, I know like right now I know that I want to start with a Mon application, which is like Mongo Express, React and Node. Skipping the React part, like Mongo Express and Node. So I'll install like some necessary packages here. So to install like packages, you can just use the npm, and it is as simple as just writing npm install Mongo Express. We also have some, yeah, it's MongoDB Express, Course, and NodeMon. So now this will just install like all the dependencies, and it will create like a node modules folder, which you might have heard that like it's the heaviest thing on earth, because like these packages like take a lot of space and have many files. But like once you have these packages installed, I can create like my starting file called index.js. Yeah. And I will also like add some scripts in my package.json that will let me run basically my file here. So for now, I'll just write. We'll come to that. I'll explain what is the use of CORS package. So yeah, sweet line here. Now I'll just add some scripts here. So I'll add the start script so that like I can just then write npm start and it will execute this code for me, which is like node index.js. And I will also like write like a dev script which runs like this environment in like a NodeMon. So we use NodeMon because like whenever I'm coding and I add a new code, I want my application to reload itself. So that's why NodeMon basically checks all your code files in your particular directory, and whenever you update a code file, it reloads the thing. So if I just like do npm start here, okay, see this, yeah. npm start. So as you can see, it just prints hello world. And for now, like you won't understand the difference between these two, but I will show you in like when I show you the application which has Express in it. So I hope you caught like the procedure for starting a Node.js application. And well, yeah. So we saw this live. Obviously, next thing that we have is the menu, which is the API. And yeah, so API is the menu that the server provides to the client, and the client can then select from it. So yeah, I'm repeating myself here, but I hope you catch the point. So there are like four kinds of major APIs. Like two of them are like the biggest and the most popular ones, which are REST and GraphQL. And like for this session, I'll be focusing on REST, which is representational state transfer, if I were to say the full form. And we'll study this because like the learning curve for REST is easy, and like there's a large community that uses REST. Most of the public APIs are REST, GraphQL is like the next upcoming style for creating APIs. But yeah, you can explore that on your own time. So these are like the kind of requests that you can send in REST. So before we start with this, okay. Basically in REST, you have something like endpoints. So like this item, there's this item, and like if this is a client, each client can sort of request some sort of data from each endpoint. So I can have something like users here, and when this client sort of requests this endpoint, this will send it data regarding users. I can have something like time, or like the server time, and if like the client requests like this endpoint, it will just return the current time on the server. And then I can have something like the admins, and this will return the name of the admins on this particular computer here. So these are something like endpoints that we can create in REST, and you access these endpoints using HTTP methods. So does this make sense till now? Yeah. So in HTTP methods, we have like 4 major kinds of HTTP methods. There are others also. There's something like patch, and yeah, there are others, but 4 major which can be mapped to like CRUD operations. So these are like post, get, put, and delete. So well, post is for creating some data in the database. For like reading data from the database, you have something called get. For updating data, you have put request, and for deleting data, you have like delete request. So how does the API look, or how does this menu look? So it looks like this, and this is basically the Swagger schema of one of the APIs that I have created. So you have endpoints like this, and you have like a way to access them. So I have like get on user, and this basically returns me all the users of my application. I have post on user, which lets me add a new user on my application. So same place, like same endpoint, but different functioning. So it's like I'm ordering the same dish, but I'm asking the waiter to do different things. So in this case, like I'm instructing the waiter that I want my dish cooked in this particular way. And then with this command, I'm asking the waiter to sort of, okay, now that you know the instructions, just give me the dish now. So serve it to me like that. So this is how like APIs usually look. There's like some HTTP method grouped with like the endpoint that you have to visit, or the endpoint that you have to call. And like what is a request? So okay, so you have this network tab in your like Chrome DevTools, and you can see what a request is. So request has many parts. So if I were to like send this request to my server, it will respond like it is hosted on Heroku, so there's some cold start. But yeah, so let's wait for that to respond. Meanwhile, I'll explain you what these parts are. So a request has something which are called headers, and it has something called a payload. So headers basically headers are some sort of like communication used by the client and server to to transfer some data. And okay, this will better be seen. Yeah, so I can have like headers. So headers contain some sort of like metadata, like data about the request. And yeah, so yeah, and I can have like some sort of headers here which just let me know what kind of request it is, what is the host, where did it originate from, and stuff like that, what browser was the person who requested it was using. Then you have something like request payload. Request payload basically contains the data that you want to transfer in a request. So if you have some data, basically I am doing a post request here. Post request basically means that I have some data and I'm sending it to server. That's why this request has a payload, and this payload is JSON. Basically all this data that I entered here is sent in this request. Then once you send the request, your server uh, responds to the request and it sends some data. So in this case, my server responded with the message user added successfully, and it sent the user object that was added, so that the front end knows that the data is consistent with what was sent. So you send such requests, like there are different kinds of requests. There is get request, as I said, those HTTP methods that we used. So let's visit like the kitchen now, and I'll show you some code. And yeah, let's see some code. Before that, I'd like to share this like Node.js starter application that I created. It's I put it on my GitHub here. And like there's this sort of like links to the presentation tutorial and an ORM based tutorial. I'll get to what this ORM based tutorial is about. And yeah, so basically this application is like a Pokemon Finder API, where what you can do is you can like we used to play Pokemon Go, right? So what you can do is you can add the location of a particular Pokemon and send it to the database. The database stores like the location, name of the Pokemon, location, and its type and the level that was spotted. And what other users can do is other users can find Pokemons which are closest to their particular location. So this is my API. I have something like add Pokemon, and what this is at this particular URL, and I'm sending some data here. So I have like name, coordinates, address, type, and level. And then if a user wants to see what kind of Pokemons are present around him, he can just do a get request at slash Pokemon and send his own coordinates. And this will basically respond with some sort of Pokemon related data. And if the admin wanted to delete some Pokemon from the database that the new users cannot spot, he can perform a delete request. Okay. So yeah. So this is the application that I have coded, and I'll take you through the code. But like, is it clear like what we have studied till now? I'll sum it up on the whiteboard again. So it is, so we can move to the next section. So we started with like comparing how web servers work with restaurants. And basically this has three parts: client, API or the menu, and the server. Client is your browser that requests something from the server. Server is hosted at some URL. In this case, it is a local host, but if you were to host it on cloud, it will be like something like 85.41, basically on an IP address at a particular port. Uh, your browser sends a request to this server, and this request is sent uh, in the language of the API. Basically, this is the menu, and you need to select something from the menu so that the server can understand. So we send this request and the server responds with some data. We saw the example of REST, and REST internally uses HTTP methods like get, post, and yeah, get, post, put, and delete. And so what we are seeing now is like sort of trying to create a server side application, an application that can be hosted on like a particular IP address which runs Node. And in Node, what you can do is like this, this takes requests, and you can write some JavaScript code to send some response You do this via like basically you do this via using a package called Express. And in this package, you have Express. Express has some routes. So as we saw, routes were a part of API. So you can have some routes here. And for each route, you can write a JavaScript function. Basically, what this function does is uh, this function has some parameters as input, like how we would have like in any function in like normal computer science. It has some input. You process this input, you fetch some data from the database. That can be either on your local system or like on the cloud. This database returns some data that you asked, and then you further process this, and then you send this as response. So I hope this is clear up till now. And now I'll sort of explain you the code of the Node.js application that does this. So I showed you like how we created the new application. This also has a package JSON. I'm using body parser, course, .env, Express, MongoDB, Morgan, and NodeMon. So each of this package has like a particular function. Body parser is used to convert like the data that is coming in post request to JSON, which can then be understood by JavaScript. CORS is related to the cross origin thing that browsers and like it's sort of like a security thing that basically web applications have. So what CORS means is that basically when you send a request to someone, it should be sent using an origin that is known to this person. Like if all these URLs ended in .in, like or all these devices. So basically, if I visit facebook.com or facebook.in, and I request a particular Facebook server using this, when I have visited this URL, this server knows that, okay, this was sent when the user was on this URL. If I were to send the Facebook server a request from something like phonywebsite.com, so Facebook server wouldn't like respond to this phony website because it knows that the origin doesn't match in the backend. So basically, you can just set like what origins are allowed to interact with your server, and origin basically means the URL of your front end. That makes sense. Like someone was asking about CORS. Okay. So starting like with the main file of your code, yeah, it is safe to include CORS. You can ignore CORS, but like I recommend use CORS if you are to deploy anything in production. In development, you usually allow all like you at least all the URLs in CORS. So starting like with the index.js. So a lot of code here, but understand. So this is like functional code. I start with creating a function, and this is basically my main function. So whenever I would like do npm start or node index.js, this function would run. And you studied JavaScript, right? So this is how you import a package in like Node. By using the require syntax. So require express, require course, require body parser, require mongo.db.mongo client. So this is just a way of loading like more JavaScript code into your JavaScript file. And I initialize my application as like an express application. So this is basically if I were to map it in terms of OOP, this is like the constructor. But yeah, we have functions. JavaScript doesn't not. I don't know if it has constructor. Like we have constructors, but in the new JavaScript. But I think they mostly transcompile to some functional thing in the back. Anyway, not focusing on the complex stuff. This just initializes your application as an express application. This is your a database URL. What this means is that when I install MongoDB in my local system, or if I were to run MongoDB on like a cloud hosted in a cloud, it would have like something like the URL for it, and it will have like a DB port. So in my case, I'm running it in my local system. So the URL is just localhost and the port is like 27017. I think this is the default MongoDB port. You can configure it to your liking. So this just lets me know like what URL my database is hosted on, and you can like access this using something like MongoDB Compass. So when you install MongoDB in your like system, this is installed by default. And those of you who have used like my PHP admin or some sort of like that sort of application to access like databases, this is like the MongoDB equivalent of that. Like you can see what your database contains. So yeah, now that I know where my database is hosted, I can sort of start initializing the middlewares. So what middlewares in like your web application are is that I have someone ordering and I have this waiter here. Okay, so I send some request here, and this request comes to the backend server. So what the middleware does is that it beautifies or it processes this request in some way before sending it to your function. So this is my function. This is the point where the request comes, and anything in between the point where the request comes and the point where the request is processed is like a middleware function. And these functions basically process your request in some way and manipulate it so that it is easier for your function to process. So I spoke too much, but did that make sense? What middlewares do? So like in simple terms, like some data comes here, and this is just like a group of functions that this data goes through before actually calling the function that you have routed to that particular route. So these functions are basically middlewares, and basically most of the stuff is functional in like Express. So everything that you do would be performed using functions. So I have some middleware. So I basically have the course middleware here. Then I have Morgan. Morgan is the logger middleware. So whenever I have like a request at any of the endpoint, it just logs that request in my terminal. Body parser, as I said, converts like the body of the request to JSON so that it can be easily then processed by your function. Then I have added like an example middleware. So this is an example middleware. It just takes your request and response objects, and it has something like a next function. So I can perform anything here. As I have called, I have done print console, like I have printed middleware called here. But you can do anything. You can write your own middlewares. Usually middlewares are used to process auth of a particular user. So what happens here is that whenever like a person sends a request and someone has signed in your application, they send like some sort of token with your request in request headers. So before I actually route like the request data to my function, I need to check if this request contains the proper token. So I process this token in like a middleware, and if the token is approved, then only I call the next function. Otherwise, I send a response from this middleware only that your sign-in information is not correct. So that is like one application of using your own custom middlewares. Then as you would do like in your normal Python or Java application, you have to connect to the database. So I have connected to my Mongo database here, and I have like some parameters here, and I have the database URL here. Next thing is that I basically start a server, and this can be started using the express listen function, and by providing a particular port. So this code basically does that. It starts up a server on the port of my liking, and then this is the function that runs on my application or on my server. So this is the like main function after all the pre-processing to requests, and after everything is taken care of before the data can be processed. So yeah, well, I have like this sort of collection here uh, in my MongoDB, which has some sort of data, some sort of location data, and name and address. And this is the like this is some pre-processing that you have to do for like using like location in MongoDB. So this is the code for that, and then I can start adding my routes. So I have like added like my Pokemon API route at slash. I can do something like Pokemon here, and all the functions in Pokemon API.js would be routed to this. I'll use slash because I have added like the suffix in this file. So this is also a function. Basically, I'm exporting this function from this, and what this function has is like I have this thing called express.router. So express.router lets you create a router, and you can have this sort of route. So as I was saying, like this is basically you creating your own menu. So this is my place, like this is the entry in the menu. I can order this, I can order this, I can order this. How can I order this? So I can order this using a post request, I can order this using a delete request, and I can order this using a get request. And then I have mapped some functions to this. Like each menu item has some function that then the server performs when the client calls this particular URL. So I'll start with like the add function here. So each route function has like two parameters, request and response. So you can get all the request data from like this request object here. I can get request headers, I can get request payload, and request payload basically comes in like request.body because I have used body parser. So I fetch all the data, and then I use like this sort of MongoDB syntax to insert it into my database. So something about MongoDB, I sort of missed it. MongoDB is a NoSQL database, so you don't need to like create like tables or relations in MongoDB. You can just start creating documents and add data as JSON in MongoDB, and then you can fetch data. It is as simple as just searching something in a JSON file, loading it, and yeah, good to go. If you don't know what SQL or NoSQL is, then well, good for you. You have an opportunity to learn. And I think this won't be as difficult to understand because it is just like adding data into an Excel sheet or in a JSON file. So yeah, this is the syntax for like inserting some data into this particular collection or this particular file in MongoDB. They are called documents, if I were to use like the technical term. So once this is added, if there is some error, basically I send response that okay, some sort of server error occurred. If this executes properly, I send like okay, status 200, message accepted. So 500 and 200 are like the HTTP status codes. There are other status codes also. Like you get like the most famous error like 404 resource not found or not authorized, something like that. So those are all HTTP status codes that servers use. So 200 means that successful operation. 500 basically means that some sort of error occurred in server, and 400 means that resource not found. I think it is 404. 404 means resource not found. There are other HTTP codes also. So, well, these are the sort of functions that I've created. I have a function that is used to add Pokemons. I have a function that you can use to delete, and I have a function that you can just use to get Pokemons which are closer to your location. So basically, I get like a location from query parameters, and then I just use this MongoDB function find, and it has some sort of like wildcard operators that you can use to find location near to the location that you have input. So this can be found in documentation very easily. So these are the functions that I have. So now let's use this application, and basically I will be using Postman to interact with my server, since I don't have like a ready front end for this. But what Postman can do is that Postman can interact with server using the calls that I have specified. So I have this post method here, and as I have routed this to admin/Pokemon, I will post this request to this particular URL, which is http localhost 5000 admin/Pokemon, and I can send some data here. And I am sending JSON data, which is name, Gengar, coordinates this, address, type, and level. So, okay, let's add some new data. When I send this request, it sends the request, and when this data is added into my database, it gives me a message accepted. Now let's see if this data was actually added or not. So in this request, I was sending something called body, and this is sent as request payload. In get request, you have something like query parameters. So anything that I add after like the route, after question mark and route, is mapped as query parameters. So in query parameters, I have x location of my current location and y of my current location. And basically, when I send this request, when I send this request, it gives me all the Pokemons that are close to my location, which is here. So as you can see, I got some response here. It gives that, okay, Charizard, it is at 7223, which is close to 7324. Then I have Gengar at coordinates 5050, and I have Pikachu. So, well, your data was added to the database. Now you can access it by this particular call, and everything is done using by your Node server. As I said, I also have a middleware that logs my requests. So this log that, okay, a post request was done on admin Pokemon, and then someone called a get request on Pokemon with this particular location data. So that is mostly it about this application. Like it is a simple API that lets you add and get Pokemons close to your location. So any questions so far? Any questions so far? Now, like this is the pantry part, and I'll talk about MongoDB for like some time, and we'll also see like what ORMs are, and yeah, basically that. But let me know if you have any questions so far. Like anything fundamental that is not clear or anything, yeah, let me know. I'll wait for like 1 minute or something. Yeah, if not, you can just write clear, and that would give me some confidence to move ahead. Okay. Also, like someone was asking if you should install the latest for Node or like the previous version. That's on you. You can either download like the latest Node version, or you can download the stable version. Great. So let's like see. Let's explore what MongoDB is actually about. And you can also download MongoDB from this particular website. So it is like, as I said, it is like a no SQL database, and it is document based. So basically you can manipulate data in JSON form. So yeah, you can store data in basically this way. This is like the JSON way, and you have some a powerful query language. So it is different from SQL, where you have to write SQL syntax. In this case, you can just call functions, and they sort of have like some great other functionality also, like creating indexes and stuff like that. So the thing about like you can also use ORMs with MongoDB, and ORMs are basically object relational model. And what I think that's the correct full form. Yeah. So it what it does is that it lets you connect documents which contain some sort of similar data, and this can be then used for like validation and security purposes also. And like in case of like Node, we have ORM and something like ODM also, which is object data model. So ODM basically helps you to validate data. Like I showed you this example, and in this example I am just putting any sort of data that comes from my request. I am not validating it here. So I am not validating if this address is a proper address or if these coordinates are proper coordinates. So what you can do is you can use something like a object data model, or like a object relational model. And the most popular one for Node.js is Mongoose. So you can explore this. I'll show you like a whole tutorial which will be helpful in the website making competition that you have like taken part in. So you can visit this website and explore more about Mongoose. So it lets you create like a schema for your data models. It is similar to what you would do in Django. So those of you who know how Django works, uh, this will be similar to that. I mean, you have a Django session coming, so it will get clear what ORMs are in the next session. But yeah, this is it. And we can sort of quickly visit the getting started guide here. So you can sort of create these sort of like schemas. Okay, not this. Wait. So yeah, this is the tutorial that I was talking about. This is like a really extensive tutorial that will that if you follow, you will create like a great MERN application, and you can also deploy this to production. So you can follow this and like change certain things in this to create like your own uh, application and work on your problem set. So I'll send this in chat. And well, when I talk about ORMs, yeah, yeah, this is what I wanted to show. So yeah, this is like a relational schema that you can have for your database. And since we are using Mongoose, which is a NoSQL, you can't do this using Mongoose. So you use some sort of intermediary between. This intermediary is Mongoose. So it is as simple as doing npm install Mongoose. Then since you are using some like middleman, Mongoose will connect to your MongoDB rather than you directly connecting to MongoDB. And as I was saying, you can define some schema, and then your data, whatever data comes, whatever data you post to your server will be validated using the schema that you have defined. So in this schema, I can define that I have something called a string variable, which is of type string, and a data variable, a date variable, which is of type date. And you can create a model from this, and then you can use this to store data into MongoDB and fetch data out of MongoDB. So this is like the sort of validation that you can use with it. Like if I had something like age, then I can give it a type number, and I can specify minimum, maximum, and required basically parameters here. And then you can also validate it. So where is the age validation? Okay, yeah. So here I validated like minimum should be 6, and if it is like lesser than 6, I can respond with 2 few x. Similarly, in this example, I can give like age less than 18 not allowed. So this is like a combination of ODM and ORM that you can use in your Node.js application. So I we'll see like the complete code for like a MERN service next, and then I'll show you some of my code also. So yeah, before we move, again, any questions so far regarding Mongoose or MongoDB, or how a server works in general? Can I revisit the middleware part? Yes, I can. Also, I'll show some. I'll show an example, but let's start with the fight code. So basically, everything is functional, right? I get a request, like this request hits on my server here, and this request is then being like it is processed using Node. So I have my Node here, and so middle, and I have like the function that I have routed, basically at route something like user slash whatever, and I have attached the function that processes this request here. So before my request reaches from here to here, it has to pass through some intermediate functions, like some functions that I have put in the middle, that basically help, that basically manipulate this request into some data that can be easily processed by this function. So these functions in the middle here, in between like the point where your request data comes and where your request where the data is processed, is called a middleware. And this basically has like 3 parameters, these functions, which is req, res, and next. So if this middleware approves the request that is coming, I can just call next, and everything, all the data is passed on to the next function, and then to the next function. If some error were to occur in this middleware, I can just do res.send token not authorized, and that's why we have the response object here. And I have used something like body parser middleware, right? That I said that it converts like all the request data into JSON form. So if I were to take example of that, what that would be doing is like your request must have something like req.body dot like a big object, and something like object.payload, whatever. This will be like a big thing. And what the body parser middleware would do is that this will be a function, as everything is here. And what this will do is that basically this will extract all the payload data in like a loop, and this will add it to the req.body dot like some name here, and like that. Basically you can manipulate the request object. You can send response if something is not according to your necessity in the middle only, before sending it to the data where it is processed. Or you can just like, if everything goes according to the plan, you can call the next middleware. And like the example of middleware can be seen in this. As I said, you can create auth middleware for your application. So I have created like an auth middleware here. So yeah, this is like the auth middleware here. And what it does is that first I extract the token from request headers. So as I said, request has something called headers, and I extract my token here. These are all the paths which don't require token. So if the request has this sort of path, then I just return next. But if the request doesn't have these paths, so if it is hitting something other than this, I check like if the request has a token. If the request is not providing me a token, I basically end the functioning here of that particular request, that uh, there's no token provided by you. You need to provide a token. If there is a token, I basically check if I have like a particular user in my database corresponding to that token, and then I send like okay, I send it to like the next middleware. So middleware is just a function that processes some sort of data in between like your server start and the place where you have attached your route function. And like this is like an example of doing auth using middlewares for your node application. So I hope that was clear, and now we can like see the big example that I wanted to explain. Yeah, so basically this is like a complete Express node and Mongo Mongoose project, and it is similar to what we created, but this has like the ODM Mongoose. And yeah, this also starts with like you require some packages. You have like your Mongoose configuration here, and then your database configuration, and then there are like lots of middlewares here. So I have like a logger middleware, uh, express.json. I think this is similar to body parser. Then they have used cookie parser, and yeah, these are all sorts of middlewares they have used. And then they have multiple routes. So there's like the index route, then there's a user route, catalog route. So if you are going to create like an application for WMC using like the Mon stack, you will also have multiple routes. So if you were to create like the PG finder thing, you'll have authentication for like a user, authentication for admin. So you have admin routes, user routes. Then you have like the database thing for PGs. So I showed like how we can find like how we can add location based data in MongoDB for Pokemons. You can do the same for PGs also. So there's that. Then there is this middleware. I think this is a custom middleware that they've made for like catching 404 and sending it to error handler. And like yeah, so that is like the main file, and they have all these sorts of routes that have been imported from their routes directory. And this project follows something like an MVC. It has models, views, and controllers. And basically, views are okay. Even I am not like fully aware with the MVC thing, but yeah, controllers are something that process like connect to data, get it, process it. Views are something at where the data is asked, and views connect to controllers, and controllers connect to data. And basically, models is where like you would define how your data is. So this will have like the schema for like this author, and author has like first name, family name, date of birth, and then they have some functions which processes the data whenever like it is called from the database. So this is a bit complicated, and if you want like fully understand this, follow this tutorial. Follow this tutorial. It is like a great tutorial. So yeah, this is the link for the tutorial, and I already sent it in chat. So yeah, we have some time for Q&A, and if you were to if you wanted to ask something more advanced, you can ask. So yeah, go on. That's mostly it about like Node and everything. So I can show you one more example of the code, and this is written by me, so it is more clear. So yeah, this also has like the index.js config. We have like libraries, middlewares. Then you have routes. Basically, I have defined these routes, and I have added it at slash. Then I have like basically created my views and controller in the same files, and I don't have models because I'm directly using MongoDB, and that is like using raw SQL with your applications. So yeah, I have this sort of routes, like they use post get as I explained in my application, and yeah, so you can use this sort of like a try catch block to always write your request processing. And if anything goes wrong when you are like processing data, you can just catch it and send like server error. So that's mostly it. So think of the questions that you can ask, and meanwhile I'll sum up what we studied today. Yeah. So as we had talked about the restaurant analogy, skipping all that, skipping to the node part. uh, in Node, you create an application which is hosted on a server, and this is basically run on a port. Your client sends some request here, and this request contains like some data, or it requests something, that what kind of data it wants. Yeah. So when it contains data, you use post HTTP method, and when you want some sort of data, you can use like the get method with query parameters, and you have delete and stuff like that. These requests reach the Node.js start point. Then you have some sort of middlewares that look into these requests and analyze them, and manipulate something in this request. Once everything is clear, once your request has been approved by whatever logic you have written here, it goes to the particular route. So if this request was sent to users slash admin, it will go to like the function that you have routed to this particular route using like like app.use or something, like the router that you created using Express. Then this function will be called. Uh, Whatever processing that you have written in this function will be done, and you can either like directly use MongoDB with this, and directly execute functions using like the mongo.db.collection syntax, or you can use something like ODM and ORMs. So I showed you like an example for this, and we saw some code, but like I haven't personally used ODMs or ORMs with Node. So basically you will have to explore this on your own, but use this in WMC if you are going to create like a big application, because it will be helpful. And these are basically helpful for creating like a schema relation between your documents and validating data. Once your data is processed, you do something like res.status 200, and either you can like in message you can give docs, or you can just give message accepted. Or if your request hasn't been processed according to your like if some error occurred in your server, you can send res.status 500. And that is how like a server mostly functions, and how your data from your database is served to your client. So yeah, that's it. I'm open to questions. Yeah, you I mean, you don't have to use Mongoose. There are other options also for ORMs and ODMs, but you have to use some sort of like a glue between your Node application and your MongoDB. Because if you were to directly use MongoDB and I think it also works great using direct MongoDB, but then I mean, data validation is really important, and that's why I'm recommending you use ORMs and ODMs. And yeah, but when you use MongoDB directly, they have like these sort of functions that they have created. Yeah, so yeah, you can like initialize your DB and db.collection. So basically, I have like named documents in my database, and I can insert into that, or I can use functions like find one, and subsequently I can call like aggregations and major like advanced stuff also. So I don't know like how well Mongoose works with aggregations, but I worked on this application that required some sort of complex analytics, and it got easier because MongoDB supported aggregations. So based on your use case, you need to decide if you want to use ORM or not. But yeah, Mongoose is like a great option if you want to go with ORMs. I think you can use template engines in Node also. However, I haven't used template engines in Node, so I am not aware if there are any. I have only used Node to create APIs so far. But I mean, I can like you can always do a quick Google and find it, because like we usually talk about Mon stack. So we use Node to create like the backend API, and the front end is created using React. So I haven't heard about any HTML templates, but let's see. Yeah, so you can use some sort of template engine with Express. And what this would mean is that rather than like you'll get a request, and rather than responding with some JSON data, uh, whenever you get like, for those of you who don't know what template engines are, whenever I get a request, I'll have like this Node application. This will take some data, and I'll have this function here which will take like read some HTML here and put my data into this HTML, and basically this function will return some like beautiful HTML code, and this HTML code will be returned to browser. So that would be equivalent of like this thing, this request here. So in the response, you can see that whatever I requested, I, yeah, I basically request something at mdn/path on GitHub. This is a GET request, and the server responds with like some HTML code, and then this HTML code is rendered in your browser. So if you were to use some HTML templating engine with Node, this is how it would behave.